This is the Deliberate Talks Weekly Podcast, powered by the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Tune in every week to learn something new about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And now, over to the voice of your host, Dakshin Adyantaya. Enjoy the show.
And hello there, welcome to the Deliberate Talks podcast. And I'm your weekly voice, Dakshin Adyantaya. And today, we have someone whose family has not just fed our tummies with delicious snacks, but has also fed our minds with nurturing practices of legacy-led entrepreneurship. But before we get into our conversation with him, here are some insights on family businesses in India. Did you know globally, as well as in India, family businesses contributed to over 70% of the GDP of most developing and developed countries? The Deloitte Research report states that family firms constitute to 85% of total companies in India and also contribute an ample share of employment and domestic output. And in the line of findings of the PwC India's Family Business Survey, 76% of Indian family businesses have shown a growth in the last 12 months, which is higher than the global average of 69%. And now, more about it with someone who specializes in this professionally. He's the fourth generation partner of an 81-year-old business, the Chitale Group. Over the years, he has handled multiple roles within the group that includes manufacturing, operations, supply chain, data management, and MIS. He now focuses on the strategy and the operational domain. And apart from this, he's an angel investor and has invested and onboarded tech startups like HR-Neeti, Women's Criczone, and Shoptimise. Here's introducing Indraneel Chitale. Welcome, Indraneel. How are you doing?
Hi, Dakshin. I'm doing very well. Glad to be part of the show today.
Super. Welcome to the Deliberate Talks podcast. I've been seeing your updates of late about launching new packaging, giving interviews, opening new stores, clicking pictures with your staff and partners. How have you been keeping up with all these things?
So the busy schedule is not a problem. I think the outreach on the social media is something that is new, but that is something that I'm still coming to grips with, but it's working out pretty well. So I think as long as you're busy and it's keeping you occupied and there are challenges, so that's the best environment to be in for a business.
That's great. And do you even find time for yourself and your family? Do you even, like your friends would say, even chill in life?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm extremely social as a person when it comes to away from work. So I have a close-knit network of friends and family members. So that way we've all figured out a mechanism over the last 10 years that I've been working with the family. So usually I try not to raise too much red flags there. And so far that's been okay.
And you've been successful with that, right?
Yeah. And I think I would also credit the fact that thanks COVID, international travel has been a lot less. And probably very often, even for people like me who are on the move, we probably have this addiction of just being on the move too often. And what can be done on a Zoom call would often take a meeting and a lot of travel. So we are also trying to strike a balance where that's helping us to be.
Absolutely. And apart from that, you're also studying, is what I've heard. You're going to be completing your course from Harvard, is it?
Correct.
You have your hands full, and hats off to you the way you're managing, balancing your work life. That's fantastic to see.
I prefer that. I think that no fun otherwise if it's not keeping you occupied. So just by nature that I like being loaded at the top of my brain. So that way that keeps me productive.
Great. And the other part to it is you're also an investor. And tell me about that part of your journey. How is that shaping up for you?
So I think the investor journey has been super, and lockdown has been beneficial for that business as well. Because all these investments that I did were all based on doing a lot of things remotely, maybe on the cloud, using cloud and data and AI and data mining, and just simplifying processes for people around. So thanks to the lockdown, all of these activities have gained a lot more priority. So HR-Neeti is one company that I'm part of that is into simplifying human resource management. And never has been there a greater need of remotely tracking employees from a singular location and actually having all of it on cloud and creating access to people without them coming into the main office or having a face-to-face interaction. So that way we've seen a big growth in business there. Another business that I'm invested is in Shoptimise, which is into creating stores for conventional businesses online. So it's about e-commerce and taking businesses online. And I think we've all seen the story of e-commerce, and it's been no exception there as well. Another business that I'm invested into is into genomics and genetic testing. And we are seeing a big change in the mindset of the people around us, that they are now taking healthcare from a preventive perspective also, and it all starts with the DNA. So I wouldn't say it's up yet, but whatever we are achieving right now at the lab scale, it's doing well. The fourth business is Women's Cricket Zone, which unfortunately is probably not been the best year for sports. But especially on the live streaming format in other countries, like say Germany or Kuwait or many other countries which are not probably ICC first world countries for cricket, that is where we've been able to get some traction on viewership rights. And that's proving out to be an interesting change in the model of what we want to do with Women's Cricket Zone. So it's been a learning exercise, but some things where you were invested in the right zones, they've played out well. Some places you've got a lot better clarity as to what to expect. And some places the consumers got better clarity, so we don't have to sell too hard.
Right. Superb. And where did this interest from cricket arise for you? Do you love the sport? Are you a part of the sport?
I love the sport. I never played it competitively, although, but cricket was something that I just enjoy watching.
Right.
And whenever we have matches in Pune, I make it a point to go watch that, even if it's Mumbai or any other locations. I've done that. And then the whole idea of women's cricket has been that a lot of women from our country are taking great interest in playing the sport, and just like that across the world, many other countries, women are playing cricket very well. And they need a platform, they need an avenue, and with the whole SaaS architecture that's around it, how can we just improve the ecosystem for women cricket is what we are trying to do.
Right. Fantastic. Indraneel, you're also quite accessible on the social media platforms, right? You're not only active on LinkedIn, but also on Twitter. Is this a conscious decision to take care of your own pages? And if yes, then let's get straight into what are some of the social media tips for entrepreneurs who handle her or his own account?
Oh, yes. So it has been a conscious decision. And, I have dabbled platforms. I have accidentally done a lot of things which probably helped me gain some attention, and did not really see the power of social media till I actually fell into it and started exploring what can be done out of it.
Right.
So, yes, I think we all keep seeing around that social media can be a problem, especially with the younger audience around us. But if used properly, it is a great tool to connect. And at the end of the day, look, see, we are running consumer brands. If we are not talking to the people around us and listening to what they want, what they feel about you, the brand, or something else, and just getting perceptions, you are missing out on something which can be a great input for your brand as well, or
Right.
in terms of thinking on strategy. So that way, outreach is very important, because now what has happened is that with social media, unlike in the times when people used to make it a point to sit down, meet, and talk about things, now everybody's posting and you have to listen. So if you're not listening and if you're not responding to it, then you're losing out on something. So you don't know what you are, and it might not be tangible, but you will be doing that. And in the long run, that's a big deficit. So I make it an effort to handle my social media personally, because that just helps me build that real connect and get a real feel.
Right. But, there's also a flip side to this, isn't it? Like now you become a social listening medium to your consumers, and they can kind of tweet out to you or reach out to you and bother you by saying, I'm not getting this product here, or share complaints with you, and so on. Becomes manageable for you?
No, I like that. And, see, if you just compare how business has evolved, previously when there were stores or shops, the shopkeeper used to be there in the shop, and his job was not to see what was moving or what every person is doing in the shop. His job was to listen to the consumer. Now the shop has changed. We retail in lakhs of stores, and everywhere we cannot be there to listen to our consumer. So this space or this exchange is very necessary. And what I've seen is that few of the leaders that I follow, few of the leaders who've also studied in organizations that I have studied in, where I've seen is that that authenticity of the leader actually taking a stand, whether something's good or bad, is very essential in creating brand equity.
Right. Right.
And very often you can build products which can be bad, but if you have a brand that has created great equity, your consumer is mature enough or noble enough to accept a mistake and move ahead. But then if that personal connect is not established, then it's a problem. So that's how it works, is what I've seen, and that's why I try to take an effort for that. But that is where I also see a problem, which you asked me about, is that very often there are media companies who are handling these pages, and it's not in sync with what's happening in the personal life of that person. So there is a certain degree of hypocrisy that can come into it. So how can you try to keep that authentic is also something that lies fully in the hands of the person who's operating that. So what are the do's and don'ts, and what you don't want to do is something that you have to be very clearly defined about.
Right. And most times pages handled by agencies kind of make it look scripted, or sometimes it could even backfire as well. Kudos to you for your effort. Right then, Indraneel, everyone knows about the legacy brand your family runs. And of course, the history and other aspects of the business has been documented over the years. Straight down to 80 years later, and I'm all yours to understand when your generation of partners like Kedar, Nikhil, Atul, Rohan, Pushkar came into the picture, what really changed for the brand?
So couple of things that changed. One thing would be that all of us came with a certain professional experience outside the organization as well.
Right.
So that way, our generation before us was wise enough to put us through that experience, because that way, whenever we did come into the company as owners or somebody who was supposed to take decisions, it was not something that felt entitled, and not something that we see as the big road today, which is of nepotism. So there were clear definitions as to what we do and what we don't do. And because of the professional experience or just working outside, interning outside, we had a defined clarity that what our roles need to do and achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to slip into our roles of, say, being the operations head, or being the R&D head, or being the procurement head, or the marketing head, as professionals and not just members of the family. And that is something I am very proud of in my generation, because all of us are able to bring that professionalism onto the table, and which is probably one of the main essence as to why even in the fourth generation the family stays together and operates together. But along with that, what I would also say is that with that came a certain degree of a tidal shift in how we wanted to portray ourselves as a brand, be heard as a brand, and be present as a brand everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the generation before us, progressively in every generation of the family, there has been a change in the business model. So the first, my great grandfather, when he started, it was just pure milk business. Then my grandfather generation came, where they were able to venture into milk products and sweets and namkeens as well. And the store business started growing. After that, in my father's generation is when the franchising and the exports and the distribution chain started bearing fruit. And then in my generation, now we've now transitioned from being storekeepers into being manufacturers. We don't really operate any store of ours apart from the oldest one at Bajira Road in Pune. And everything else is franchised. And our bigger chunk of sales come from our distribution channel,
Mm-hmm.
where there are lakhs of stores that sell our product across 4 or 5 states in the country. And we export heavily as well. And now again, there is a change in the pattern that we want to move away from just being the celebratory partner to becoming a lifestyle partner for our consumers, because the consumer choice is evolving as well. How do we factor in that change? How do we make products that are lifestyle enhancing or adding to the lifestyle, or something that are much more holistic than just the celebration or the festive aspect of it?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, in India, we are blessed with festivals every month, so that way that's never a problem. But the way our generation looks at festivals, it's more like a long weekend rather than something that we sit and celebrate. So we have to adopt as well, and that is the change that my generation is trying to bring in. And it's interesting because we are achieving it step by step, and it's a transition that will affect probably at the end of this decade. But then that is what is going to survive us for the next 2 or 3 decades in the time to come.
Right, right. Makes sense. Another conversation around is the emphasis on a lot of things in with regards to automation and bringing in technology that has helped you introduce new age practices. Also, from introducing the new infrastructure point of view for a family business, what are some of the notes for budding entrepreneurs, and how can they change their traditional business model to a modern one?
So the biggest point would be the buying in.
Mhm.
Multi-generational family businesses, if you look at it from the ages perspective, the first generation is probably like the industrial age. They worked because they had no other choice, and they were completely fine with the idea, or rather they didn't know anything else, that they have to slog hard and be there, put in the hours and actually establish something.
Mhm.
The second generation then came, it's more like we see the late 90s or the 2000s, where IT and computers started becoming part of our life.
Mhm.
And things started moving in from doing laborious activities to doing smarter activities or outsourcing certain things based on systems.
Right.
And the next generation that has now come, which is say probably younger than me, all of them now will not work because of their financial conditions,
Right.
or because of their parental pressure. They will work because of causes or relations or connects.
Right.
Do they actually believe their values are being preserved in what they are trying to do? Do they actually get that reward of the time that they're putting into the business? Are they actually seeing that propulsion that is happening with the businesses because of other businesses, probably which are startups that are scaling so fast?
Right.
So all of these changes are something that the 2, 3, 4 generations that are there need to put on table and accept first, that there is going to be a variation in the aspirations. Do we first accept that there will be a variation in the aspirations?
Right.
If the generations before are like, there is nothing like that, then you will always be in a traditional mindset. Whether it will fail or not is a different story,
Right.
but then you will never be able to break out of it.
Right. Right.
But if that conversation happens, that buying in happens, and you are able to actually accept that, yes, this is a change that we have to put into effect, then the transition keeps happening, because these things are not revolutionary. It cannot be revolutionary, rather. It has to be evolutionary.
Right.
It has to take one step at a time. So that's how, if the buying in and the communication is not there, no other change is possible without it.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, the youngest generation has to bear the brunt of it, because the previous generations are already doing correct, because that is why they are able to give the business to the next generation.
Right. That's very interesting, Indraneel, because people might be saying that you already have a handed business given to you and it's easy for you to be in this situation. I don't think it's easy for you to be in this situation, because there's a lot of, you have to evolve the business from where it is. Like, I think there is more to it than what it has been doing, unless you, especially when the family is ready to take that leap and believe in the generation forward. Right. Super.
Correct. And that needs a working relation. So you can't just come in one day and say that this is all wrong and we have to do something new. So how do we work that is something that younger generation, including me, found it difficult initially, because we were used to just taking decisions and implementing them fast.
Right.
But when it's family-driven businesses, there is a lot of emotional value invested by the family members as well into it. And maybe even I was not so sensitive about it 5 years ago as much as I am today.
Mm-hmm.
But those factors balancing out are when actually progress happens.
Right. Makes sense. Another progress is, of course, from the product aspect. Taste is a very crucial aspect. And the brand is all about quality, right? Back then, a lot of elders, firstly, the elderly relatives would personally go there and buy a box of bakarwadi or, the chivdas and the sweets. And now here we are with new age entrepreneurs focusing on health and important aspects of dietary changes and sugar frees. How are customers coping up with this, especially the loyal customers who have been there, a part of your journey since a lot of years and decades now? Do they come to you and ask why the change in taste, or do they really kind of have this conversation with you, or how are they coping up with this?
So there are two sides of the story to this. We took a conscious decision because of the FSSAI mandate that the sweets that we make, we will be reducing sugar every year.
Right.
The percentage of sugar in it, because India is going to be the diabetic capital of the world.
Right.
And 50% of the population might be diabetic by the end of this decade.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did that, we felt that, this was empowering and we were actually doing good for the consumer, because this is something that we want to help impact their health. But then we had consumers coming and telling us that, we plan our entire meal plan around the fact that we want to consume that one Kaju Katli. If you're going to reduce the sweetness in that as well, then that's not acceptable. So you have to retain that as it is. So that's why now that is emotional value attached to it. And
Right.
these guys have figured out a mechanism to deal with their diabetes as well. So that's one side of the spectrum.
Right.
There's the other side as well, who are probably the conscious people and who are not facing problems right now, or who are not having health issues, but they want to avoid that in the time to come and are just being conscious about what they consume.
Right.
And, as a brand, we have to balance their aspirations and requirements as well. Because if we don't do that, there is a new age brand that is going to capture that.
Right.
So how do we do that and how do we balance that is something where, this whole new idea of pouring into health related and nutrition related and value enhancing food is coming up. And we'll soon be launching a sub brand for it in the coming financial year, maybe before May,
Mm-hmm.
where it will be completely about the focus on different dietary trends. So not just not adding sugar, but it will be low glycemic food, which is diabetic friendly as well.
Right.
Or people who are now consciously becoming vegan, how
Right.
can we cater to them as well? Because as a dairy brand, us doing that is red flags inside as well. So
Right.
we have to balance that out.
Right.
Similarly, there are people who are probably following high fat or high protein diets like keto, or going completely off carbs, or they don't want oil in their food at all. They want everything baked instead of fried.
Right.
So how do we factor or balance these requirements from our product range itself, and not just modify our existing products to suit that, but also create new products which actually increases our consumer base, widens our consumer net as well, and also makes us appealing to the younger generation who are going to consume consciously,
Right.
is what we are trying to do and achieve with this. And that is where a lot of effort is being put onto how we communicate this, because this is all about creating awareness right now.
Right.
And not about saying somebody is guilty for eating what they want right now. It's
Mhm.
just about whoever wants to make probably a conscious or more knowledgeable choice. Even when they want to do that, Chitale is there, and that is
Right.
what we want to say.
Right. And how has it been internally, like you mentioned about the dairy part where it's a red flag within, but how is it internally taken when you have these conversations with your elders? Are they all in sync with this kind of conversation, or it's a deep conversation that happens?
Also, it took its own sweet time. So
Right.
the first time it happened, you can imagine it was like the first test match from India versus Australia last 2 months back.
Uh-huh.
So I was all out before I could start batting. So
Wow.
then, we have to balance both facts, that we need to show the numbers, the statistics, and the reason for this,
Right.
and also see the emotional part. And also balance that the fact that, it's not about saying what we did was wrong or what we've been doing is something that is incorrect. It's just about saying that, as a brand, we are taking a liberal approach where there is a section of people who are wanting to have a choice which is different. And we want to cater to that as well. So
And
there's nothing good or bad or separated by a very thick line. It's just about appealing to a wider spectrum.
right, right. And how local is this demand? From a Pune market specifically. If I have to talk about that, how much of the demand is there in this particular market? I know it's a huge conversation out of India, as well as people's choices in India are changing. But from a local market point of view, what kind of conversations happen around this?
So what I've seen is that, the size of the market right now is too small.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. In the first year, the entire health range will cross more than 1% of our total sale in terms of totality or percentage volume sales. But these 1% are the influencers or the early adopters of these trends. And when they are adopting or moving or making these choices, we as a brand should be present there.
Mm-hmm.
Is why, so much effort is actually being put to create value to the consumers there.
Right.
There will be a time in say 5 or 6 years when this transition will happen, and it will suddenly not be say 8-9%, but will reach up to say 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it should be with us, not with some other brand.
And globally, in comparison to India, does the number remains the same, or you do export like you mentioned, and a lot of people do buy abroad as well. You do international shipping, but what's the kind of demand in terms of global compared to national?
So unfortunate as it is, but these lifestyle diseases are something that are much more predominant in better developed economies in the world. And fortunately, because of the better developed economic infrastructure in those countries, very often the younger population in those countries who are suffering from, say, an allergy like gluten will be given subsidies by the government to buy food which is gluten free,
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake that they want their population to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that way this consciousness is now increasing, where now that number goes into double digits as well. So that's why with these ranges, the international audience for it is also much wider.
Right.
And eventually, as we see that the economy of our country starts increasing, and as our honorable prime minister keeps saying that we want to be a $5 trillion economy, whenever that's going to happen, along with the increase in wealth, increase in lifestyle diseases is also going to be a side effect that we are going to inherit, all of us. And that is when people will start becoming a lot more conscious.
But this consumption, the customers, when we're speaking about global, are these Indian NRIs who are there, or is it also the global audience who are getting into it?
So for the health products, it's the global audience, not just the Indian NRIs. So Herby, which is a startup that we've co-founded, which is all about Ayurveda.
Right.
And we are making herbal infusions in it, where we are trying to bring in elements from Ayurveda, which are helping your body, say, lose weight or increase your metabolism, basically, or have a cooling effect on you, or just not increase, spark a insulin spike in your body. All of that is seeing greater demand in the Western countries than in India, actually.
Right.
So we probably will sell 90% of our product in Europe rather than selling it in India, because the consumer there is a lot more conscious about what they're buying.
Right.
In India, all of these are still urban phenomena, and we still have an extreme disparity between the urban and the rural and the tier 2, 3 category cities versus tier 1 cities, and the noise that cities make.
Right. Another aspect from the food point of view is packets to freshly served, right? How's that coming along? Because I saw a conversation on Twitter, especially when you tweeted out about the Bakarwadi in terms of the pack of 3. And there was a very interesting reply by someone who says, with my tea, I at least need 6 or 7 or 8 of them. I can't have a pack of 3. So are you looking at increasing that number to a bigger pack? But again, from the traditional outlook point of view also, how is there a receptiveness with regards to packaged product, with regards to the fresh ones that people can locally purchase when they come to the store?
So there is a pre and post-COVID phenomena to it. Pre-COVID, there was a big disparity. Anybody in India, we are used to buying everything across the counter, and what's made fresh or what's packed in front of you is perceived to be fresh.
Right.
So perception of the food that you're consuming is actually the first bite that you consume for the food.
Right.
If you're visually satisfied, that is your first bite, and that is when you can actually digest.
True.
So that's why the freshness is still valued. But post-COVID, instead of freshness, the hygiene and the safety has been given a higher priority by the consumers. And that is why we've seen that, there has been a big surge in the packaged food demand.
Right. Interesting.
And, with packaged food, if your supply chains are tight, you can replenish the product very fast and actually ensure that the time from the factory to the consumer's table is minimal. Consumers are not too concerned about it. What they are concerned about would be the use of the chemicals and the preservatives that go into it.
Right. And, there's another conversation from when it comes to a legacy point of view, right? One is, of course, the bigger companies chase family businesses, and especially when it comes to food, right? And taking over the legacy business. Your thoughts on why one should or why one shouldn't be a part of this kind of a conversation?
Well, one should be a part of this conversation, for the simple reason that very often family businesses are very conservative in the outlook of what their business size is and expecting what their business could actually be worth. When you become part of these conversations, you actually start understanding how businesses are valued. And that also helps you bring a perspective that, yes, if I start thinking like this, or if I start off thinking, say, getting some private equity or getting publicly listed or getting some venture funding on a certain domain of the business, maybe I can take it 10x. So why not is a question there. But secondly, if you are doing it simply for the sake of glamour, that we are a equity invested business or public company where I have so many shareholders, and you don't know what to do with that money, or you don't really need that money, then it's a problem, because excess is always a problem.
Right.
So if you're a cash rich company and you know what to do with the money, and you know what investment gets back into the business, what gets out as a dividend to the partners, and you know what are the directors, and there is no need to look out as well. So, keep your ears open, but probably your mouth shut is what I would say is the right advice there in terms of facing bankers.
Wow. Well said there. Well said. Right. And going back to the mention of COVID, what's next in store? With the constant change in market trends, unforeseen situations like COVID, what are the new things to look out for this in the coming year? And where is your attention going to be in this?
So we will be doing a multi-pronged approach. And our major focus for the coming financial year will be on geographical expansion. So our idea is to reinforce our presence in the 5 states that we are present in, and actually in the next 2 years reach 12 states in the country with a robust presence across that network. Along with that, what we would be doing is that we will be placing, of course, the health and the healthier option range as a separate sub brand. But with that, we will also be tackling the volume segment, which we still haven't, which is the 10 rupee category product range. And this is the snacking range, which actually brings in the biggest volumes and something that we have always stayed away from. And, we have had a team that's innovated really well, but that's supposed to be a game changer, and I'm looking forward to it.
And to sum up the whole conversation around family business and next generation entrepreneurs, what would your 5 tips, of course, from your experience, be for homegrown business owners or new age entrepreneurs?
Also, first thing, ensure that there is a great communication channel between all the members. Second thing would be that ensure that you can create a family protocol as to who communicates what. Because very often when you're trying to involve professionals, the professionals don't know who the boss is. So that is where you lose talent and you lose brand perception for hiring good quality people. So if you want good quality people working in as professionals in your company, you need to clear the communication channels very well. Third would be that, it doesn't matter what you've studied arts, literature, engineering, physics, astrophysics, whatever it is. If you're not looking at finances and accounts, it's a problem. So it's mandatory that you have to do that, and you have to understand where the money comes in, goes, your cash flows, your PAT, your EBITDA, your data, everything that is there. That's mandatory for every owner. And I feel that, first year of any junior course, you have to teach them accounts is what I feel should be part of the curriculum. Because I learned it the hard way and it's a problem. Fourth would be that, do not be risk averse, but be debt averse. Take risk and debt in a manner which are controllable, but don't exploit the debt system and rob the company. So treat the company like a baby which you have to flourish and grow from what it is today, not as a tool for you to just keep enjoying luxuries. If you feed the baby well, or it's like the hen that lays the golden egg, right? That if you are feeding the hen every day very well, the egg is going to keep coming. So don't overcomplicate things and examine where the egg is coming from. And the fifth would be is that retain the traditional values that have been the trademark or the known facets for your business, because your business stands because of those values have been retained. So what is it that you retain and let go as every generation continues is something that you should put onto paper.
Right. Wow. Nice. Superb stuff, Indraneel. That brings us to the end of our first round of questions. And now it's time to pace up things and head to my favorite round of questions. This is the rapid fire round. So, ready for this?
Sure. All set.
All right, then. Your favorite choice from the range of products the brand serves?
Mango Shrikhand.
One major gap you see in family led businesses today?
Succession planning.
Okay. Entrepreneurship can be inherited or should be learned. Your thoughts?
It's always learned. You can inherit the business, not entrepreneurship.
Best customer review or one of the oldest customer stories that you can share?
Oh, so we have this old customer. He's a bachelor. He's 88 and he still cycles to our Deccan Gymkhana store every day, about 5 kilometers. And, he'll just buy those 4 or 5 pedas that he needs every day. So he's been around since before the business existed. So that way he's been a customer since the day one. And that way, just seeing him, listening to him and, getting his feedback every day is something that I love to do. I wish I could do more of it, but I am rarely there in the stores, so I don't get to do that. But we still speak on the phone just to know what he's up to.
He cycles every day and comes there.
Every day.
My God. Lovely. Okay, then. Family business who aren't technologically driven or selling online yet, they're missing out on?
Oh, they're missing out on a market that's much bigger than what they're looking at.
Okay. If not your brand, one brand you normally lean towards to grab a bite from?
Might be politically incorrect, but then it's our Pune's homegrown brand, which is Marzurin.
And why? And what do you like there?
So I love the chicken roll and the mayonnaise that they make there.
Okay. One major trend in the food industry you reckon the retail and the packaged food will adapt?
Nutrition-based food.
Okay. For those who haven't tried your product yet, your friendly advice would be?
Oh, tell us your address and we'll ship you a hamper.
You're going to get a lot of queries on Twitter again. Okay. And at what stage should one generation of family business start thinking about succession planning?
I think it should be a part of their daily thinking process. There is no later time. Whenever you want to think, you should start thinking about it. It's that important.
Okay, nice. Well done, Indraneel. And that brings us to the end of the second round. Great answers there.
Thank
And
you.
Now moving into the last segment of our show, this is a question from Rohit Jadhav. And he asks, I'm a hotel management student looking to help my uncle and my cousin to start a food business. Because he's a family member, how does one work towards a professional atmosphere, respect each other's work ethics, and contributes towards building a business together?
So, Rohit, what I would say is that you, your uncle, and your cousin, you should just sit down one day and define your roles clearly on paper. That if he's going to do purchase, you're going to do the cooking, and the third person is going to do billing, then these are the three broad roles that you fit into. And just see that where is the intersection happening. So, if somebody is purchasing and you're cooking, but you don't like what they purchase, then you're actually not able to bill that product out to the consumer. So that way, once you know what are the contact points and the exchange points, the boundaries are automatically defined. So try to set the boundaries from day one, and then the relation builds up because you respect each other's boundaries. So setting boundaries professionally is very important, irrespective of the relation.
Fair enough. Wonderful stuff. This brings us to the end of the show, Indraneel. What a lovely conversation this has been, and very productive, I'm sure, for our listeners. Thank you so much for making time for this show, and I really hope you had a good time on the show.
It was great fun. I mean, you were so well researched. So I'm really impressed by the amount of effort you put into it. So that's great.
Thank you. And that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I personally feel there's so much of pressure in a legacy business for an entrepreneur to constantly evolve and get better at it, right? And Indraneel is a perfect example of how one could seamlessly excel by just working hard. If you have any question or feedback, you can write to me at thedeliberatetalks@gmail.com or connect with me on the social media channels and the audio platforms. Join in next Monday for another episode, and until then, please take care of yourself and don't forget to inspire and be inspired.